Initiation of a newcomer to work at a whites-only restaurant. USA, 1960. Workers constructing the 60-story Chase Manhattan Bank, 1955. Faces of War, 1919. Jews arrested after Kristallnacht, brought to Buchenwald, November 1938. Sale of Wives, England 1780 to 1850. The procedure was organized as an auction. Family Shelter for Atomic War, USA, 1961. John F. Kennedy Jr., age 3, salutes his father's casket, U.S., 1963. Harvey Ball, the man who invented the smiley face. Halloween, 1930s. Creepy children costumes before the rise of mass culture. The holiday was genuinely eerie. The Battle of Stalingrad was the bloodiest battle in world history. It lasted almost 8 months, and by February 1943, the combined losses of both sides amounted to more than 2.63 million people. The window of a rodent extermination business. They say they're still in business. A small girl in rags collects precious grains of wheat, USSR, 1921. The explosion of a boiler in a steam locomotive, one of the many scourges of the 19th century. Despite strict regulations for boiler safety and maintenance, they exploded frequently, making the machinist's job not only hard, but also dangerous. A fatal attack on the leader of the Japan Socialist Party is captured live on television. Since that very moment, communism in Japan weakened 1960. Dogs line up for a dose of coca leaf extract for an experiment, Peru, 1950. Soviet peasants listen to the radio for the first time, 1928. Hitler with the Jewish girl, Bernelli Nienau, whom he befriended in 1933. Later, when Hitler learned of her Jewish heritage, their relationship ended. Rose Kennedy, mother of the murdered U.S. President John F. Kennedy, outlived 4 of her children, 3 grandchildren, 3 sons-in-law, daughter-in-law Jacqueline, and lived to the age of 104. Madame Gustica, an Ethiopian woman with traditional lip-stretching, became a sideshow act in New York. She was often shown smoking a pipe. Manchester United footballer Eric Cantona attacks a Crystal Palace fan, 1995. The crew of the Pueblo returns to the U.S. after 11 months of captivity in North Korea, 1968. Jews arrested after Kristallnacht, brought to the German concentration camp Buchenwald, 1938. Titanic survivors, Marjorie and Charlotte Collier, in New York, 1912. In 1969, when black people were banned from swimming near white people, TV host Mr. Rogers decided to invite Officer Clemens to join him and cool his feet in the pool. People resting on the lawn on a clear day in New York, September 11, 2001. From 1871, a ban on homosexuality was in effect in Germany. Even a kiss was punished. 50,000 people were convicted in the Third Reich. The law was not repealed after the war, and people remained in prisons until 1969. Training for the annual pancake race. A young Russian girl finally tastes freedom after surviving the horrors of Auschwitz, 1945. This haunting image serves as a powerful reminder of the millions stripped of their identity. Yet, who managed to survive the impossible? Chinese diplomats criticize London police for carrying batons, London, 1967. Children in an iron lung before the polio vaccine, 1950. Human-powered tractor for moving heavy stones, England around 1880. I always wash my kitty with fragrant soap, postcard, 1920s. Wedding on a high wire, France, 1954. 20 meters above ground, no safety gear, just rings and courage. A rare photograph of the cruel tyrant George Harry Gault, a British colonial officer who arrived in Ibanda in 1905. Sometime later, one of the weary Ugandans named Rutaraka would kill him. Geronimo, the military leader of the Chiricahua Apache, who led the fight against the U.S. invasion of his tribe's land for 25 years. In 1886, he was forced to surrender to the U.S. Army. A German soldier next to a shell with the inscription, "I didn't want war," France, 1917. Few survivors of the Titanic disaster, USA, May 1912. On May 7, 1954, the U.S. officially refused the USSR entry into NATO. This decision clearly signaled the United States' hostile stance toward the Soviet Union, leading to an arms race and the intensification of the Cold War between the two powers. Combating cheating during exams, Netherlands, 1950s. A lesson in an improvised school, Hiroshima, Japan, 1946. In 1942, a Chinese-American worker at a Los Angeles factory wrote on his back to identify himself as Chinese, not Japanese. Leg prosthetics, a technology ahead of its time, year 1900. Early advancements in biomechanical support. Russians see cinema for the first time, 1924. At the 1920 Olympics, Teresa Velde became the first woman to perform a Salchow jump, but judges disapproved. In the early 20th century, rat catchers worked in the sewers beneath major European cities. They were paid for each rat they caught. Rats were hunted with guns. The last photo of the passengers of the Uruguayan Air Force plane that crashed in the Andes on October 13, 1972. Of the 45 people, 27 survived. They had to feed on the bodies of the deceased. After 72 days, rescuers found 16 survivors. A two-headed dog created by Russian scientist Vladimir Demikhov in 1954 through the transplantation of one dog's head onto another. The dog lived for 1 month. Gold mine of Bald Mountain, Brazil, 1986. A police bulletproof vest variant for the police, Germany, 1930. Afghanistan in 1973 and 2016. 18-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger with his classmate, 1965. Collapse of a grandstand during the Indianapolis 500 race, USA, 1960. A North Korean propaganda postcard from 1988. The postcard depicts a South Korean defected soldier, his new wife whom he met in the north, and a Volvo car available to any decent North Korean. The early 1920s saw the peak of sexual liberation and freedom. Numerous unions and organizations began to emerge, promoting a new cultural value, the cult of the nude body. The President of France, Paul Doumer, lights the eternal flame at the tomb of the unknown soldier. He himself lost all 4 of his sons in World War I. A roller coaster ride in the Victorian era, USA, 1900. Loggers and a giant fallen tree in California, 1892. May 7, 1954, the USA definitively rejected the USSR's entry into NATO. This decision clearly indicated the USA's hostile stance toward the Soviet Union. German soldiers carry the coffin with the remains of Napoleon II, the only legitimate son of Napoleon, Paris, December 1940. Ballet dancers peeking into the men's changing room, Paris, 1948. In 1921, designer Valerian Abakovsky tested the Aero Wagon, a train with an aircraft engine. On the return trip, it derailed and crashed, taking the inventor's life. Heads of 7 major U.S. tobacco companies testify under oath that nicotine is not addictive, 1994. This 1959 photo captures the participants of the famous Dyatlov Pass expedition, heading into the snowy mist. It is their last known photograph before the tragic events, which remain one of the most mysterious mysteries of the 20th century. A white dove lands on Fidel Castro's shoulder during his first televised address to the citizens of Cuba and stays there for the entire 2-hour speech. Havana, 1959. The arrest of Martin Luther King for suing for service in a white-only restaurant, 1964. A youth trend of the 50s in the U.S. If a girl wears a dog leash on her left ankle, she has a boyfriend. If on the right, she is looking. Employees of Fred Alger Management, photographed around 2001 on the 93rd floor of One World Trade Center, lost 35 staff in the 9/11 attacks. A group of young women holds posters condemning alcohol. This was the movement in support of prohibition in the USA, 1919. The Shanghai waterfront is filled with evacuation boats after the Communists' victory in China, 1946. Andrew Card informs U.S. President George Bush of the terrorist attack, interrupting his reading to school children in Sarasota, Florida, September 11, 2001. Escape by swimming, 1966. A mother and children from South Vietnam attempt to swim across a river to escape an attack during Operation Piranha. When the photo won a Pulitzer Prize, photographer Kyuchi Sawada went searching for the family in the photo and ultimately gave them half of the winnings. Advice from a Russian children's magazine on how to point out a black person, 1904. A crowd tries to overturn a car with a black family during racial riots in the city of Clinton, USA, 1956. Horse-drawn carriages, trams, early 1900s. Emma Lillian Todd, the first woman to design her own airplane, 1909. Vesna Vulovic, a Serbian stewardess who survived the highest free fall without a parachute from 33,000 feet in 1972. Korean soldier Yang Kyung-jong, who fought for 3 armies during World War II: Japan, the Soviet Union, and Germany. Camouflaging British military equipment as elephants, World War II, 1945. Hippo Phoebe and her baby, refusing to pose for the camera at the Bronx Zoo, 1967. Music rehearsal in a Soviet correctional prison, 1978. Charles King, President of Liberia in 1927, entered the Guinness Book of Records for the most fraudulent election in history, winning 234,000 votes in a country with only 15,000 registered voters. Captain Paul Tibbets just before taking off, during which the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, 1945. U.S. delegate displays a Soviet submachine gun captured by American forces in July 1950 at the UN Security Council, accusing the USSR of supplying weapons to North Korea. A failed kamikaze attack on the British heavy cruiser on July 26, 1945. The impact was made by a Japanese Army reconnaissance aircraft. The bomb fell into the water before the plane collided with the ship's hull. The pilot died in vain. A man raised this bull and then sold it to the arena. The wounded bull recognized him among the hundreds of spectators and ran up to him, seeking salvation. The man kissed him, after which the bull was killed. Spanish newspapers dubbed this the kiss of Judas. A woman lies on the sidewalk in the Warsaw Ghetto, dying of hunger. World War II, 1941. Notorious African dictator Francisco Nguema ordered the execution of his regime's opponents on Christmas 1975 in a unique way. 150 people were shot by soldiers dressed as Santa Claus on a football field to music. In 1979, Nguema was overthrown and executed. The execution of Amin Guth, the commandant of the Plazov concentration camp. He was the officer who entertained himself by shooting prisoners from the balcony with a sniper rifle. People skating on frozen Niagara Falls, 1885. People pose on a dead whale covered in graffiti, California, 1919. Divers, 1940s. In the Middle Ages, it was believed that people with genetic abnormalities were born from the sexual act of a woman and Satan, so no one faced any responsibility for killing such a person. Before you, the remains of Gustav Vasa, a Swedish king from the 16th century. The king who ruled Sweden nearly 500 years ago lies before us as if on display. Crown, scepter, everything is in place, but only a skeleton remains of the king. A grim but powerful reminder that time spares no one, not even kings. These unique shots capture Berlin residents trying to save zoo animals amid the thunder of Soviet artillery. Germany, 1945. A hang glider made from a bedsheet, parquet flooring, and other materials, used to escape from a British prison, 1945. Joe Arity, a 23-year-old mentally disabled man with an IQ of 46, doctors called him an imbecile, was executed for murder. Police forced him to give a false confession. The bathtub of Russian Emperor Alexander I. Kenyan President Daniel Arap Moi burns 12 tons of ivory confiscated from poachers. Kenya, 1989. Ray Park getting into character on the set of Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, 1999. Brazilian Gold Rush, 1980s. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I hope these photos impressed you. Some may have made you angry, brought a smile, made you happy, or perhaps even caused some negativity. Feel free to leave your comments and stay tuned for the next part. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Bye.